Hi, my name's Nick Best and I'm Managing Director here at Astranti. I also record the Strategic Case Study tuition videos. I've been working with Case Study now for over 10 years. I was the official writer of the old Case Study CIMA exam guide, and I have taught thousands of students to pass this exam. So my tuition videos, from which this is a sample, guide you with all that knowledge and experience. But what I like to do is not just say, look, this is what I think from all my experience. I like to bring into that what the examiner is saying about what you should be doing. And that's what this video is about. So at the end of each exam, the examiner gives us post-exam guides. And this particular sample is an analysis of part of one of those post-exam guides. So I'll leave you to the video. After each exam, the examiner produces a report much like this one we've got on the screen at the moment, where the examiner tells us this is what everyone did well or what everyone didn't do so well on, where people need to improve. And that's what this video is going to be about. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a selection of these examiners' reports. We're going to start off right back on this first one here, the March 2015 exam. The reason we're going to start on this one is that this was the very first bit of feedback. And what happened was that prior to this, we'd been given, as tutors, we'd been given a whole range of information to share with students about what the strategic case study was going to be about. Now, what actually happened was that during the March 2015 exam, when CIMA actually came to market, they refined what they were looking for and what they weren't looking for. Some of the things that we've been told in advance that they were or weren't looking for, that they changed. And so this particular one gave us a lot of extra information about what the examiner wanted and how she wanted it, and therefore this is a really important one for us to look for because it gives us a lot of basics that, to be fair, people then corrected, and most people haven't got a problem, haven't had a problem with that since that, but it's quite useful for us to see the kind of clarification points. So we're going to start with this March 2015 one, then we'll pick one a year later in 2016 and then another one in 2017. So hopefully what we can see are the evolution of ideas throughout the last few years that mean that we'll get an idea both what the examiner wanted originally and how that's changed over time. Also, we'll see where are people still making the same mistakes, like year after year after year. And more than anything, that'll be the thing for you to really focus on, because those would be the things that, everyone now knows what you're supposed to do because it's all in these reports. The question is how do you get to do it? Mostly it's practice, so knowing and then practice and feedback and so on. But the mistakes that keep on coming through year after year are going to be the ones for you to really focus on. Okay, but we'll also see the evolution of ideas as well and see some of the new ideas the examiner's coming up with as time goes on. So let's start with March 2015 now. So here's a topic that we've come across before, so it's not surprising. In fact, to be honest with you, at this stage in our studies, it's quite likely that we would have seen many of these issues before, so there probably won't be too much new, but it is nice to see the examiner actually reaffirming these ideas. So the main problems were candidates failing to answer what was asked and writing everything they knew on a topic being asked. One problem at times is people can so over-prepare the pre-scene, they write about the answer they want it to be, the one that they've prepared. I definitely wouldn't pre-prepare written answers to big questions. I would prepare the most likely topics. If we think that a likely topic is ethics, which actually it virtually always is, you need to prepare heavily for ethics. You might work through our ethics questions in our ethics pack, listen to my ethics videos, because you'll be well prepared for the high likelihood of an ethics question. But perhaps a particular pre-scene has got something, maybe they're making a big strategic change in the pre-scene. Well, actually, that would be useful to be aware of what that is and do some financial analysis of that. And then you can use that analysis as part of your report. But the key is to use it as part of your report, not to go in with preconceived ideas. I always remember actually, back on the old case study, I always remember meeting up with a student. I was teaching a course out in, actually it was a big old mansion, and I was down the pub the previous night before the course started, and I met one of the students in there. I'd arrived early the night before, and I'd met one of the students, and he had spent the time between our last course and this one almost pre-preparing all his answers, and I had to say no, you're such a big mistake. Because all that pre-preparation, he knew exactly what he'd do with the company and where he was going to take it. And he was telling me how he was going to do this with it and that with it. And I was saying, no, because you've got to answer the question. You've got to take what comes up on the day of the exam and answer that. And in a sense, sort of, yes, you've got your background. It's a bit like being an employee in a company. You know the business. You know where you'd like to take that company, but then your boss comes along and says, could you do this report for me? And then you use that background knowledge to guide that, not just to write everything you know on the topic being asked, as the examiner has said here. Okay. There were no marks available for random models, and candidates sometimes have a long list of models in their answers. So, okay, with models, the key then is to choose an appropriate model. If we're going to be analysing whether to go ahead with a project, maybe it's suitability, feasibility, acceptability. Perhaps we're thinking about the strategic options to take a business forward. Maybe we're going to consider Ansof's matrix. Perhaps we're going to be looking at risks, and therefore we're going to use the Pestel factors to look at different risks. Or Pestel could be useful for maybe doing a business analysis, a business environmental analysis. Perhaps we're going to be having a look at the industry. We've been asked to examine the industry this company operates in. Well, the model there is, do you remember, Porter's 5 forces. Perhaps there's something on finance, and we're looking at different sources of finance, and we have to answer something about long-term and short-term sources of finance. Well, of course, RF3, financial, different forms of finance comes up, and what would be most appropriate. So it's about using your knowledge and theory that's most appropriate for the question asked. But we know the examiner does like the use of models, but not the theory, a bit of the theory, but most of the application. Okay. So hopefully that's given you an insight into some of the things that the examiner wants. Of course, I go into more detail about what the examiner is saying you should and shouldn't be doing as we go through the video, and then also examine how that's changed. And actually, it's really interesting to see how some of the things that have changed as we go into 2016, 2017. We see that students have done some of the tips from 2015, but not all of them. But also there are some new things that start to come in, some new trends, some new expectations from the examiner. So the video goes on to give you that fuller view of where the examiner is and what she's expecting from you. This is of course part of a 10-hour series of videos, and I share all my best experience with you on how to pass the strategic case study exam. I give you all my tips, how to plan, how to manage your time, how to identify the requirements, everything that's needed in order to really do well in this exam. You can either just buy the tuition videos by themselves, or you can join our course where you'll get a whole range of our other materials such as mock exams, analysis of each case study, and very detailed industry analysis, normally around about 100 pages of analysis of the industry, and we do know the examiner really wants you to know the industry well. We do mock exams, we mark those mocks, we give you feedback, just very detailed analysis, everything you really need to pass the exam. So please either join our course or use the tuition video series to really get to grips with what you need to do to pass. Whatever you decide to do, I do wish you the best of luck in your exam when the time comes.